crumble. I thought today would be nice to do a fruit crumble of some sort. I've got a couple of Bramley apples in the fridge, or that I've got at home, so I needed to do something with them. I'm using Bramleys. They are obviously cooking apples, so I'm going to need to cook those in a bit. But you could use eating apples. If you're going to use eating apples, peel them, slice them up, but they don't need to be cooked in the saucepan like I'm going to do. And you could also add any other fruit that you wanted to into this. So it's up to you what fruit you put in there. I looked in my fridge and I've got some blueberries today that are looking really a bit soft, and so they need to be used up. So I've got probably a handful of blueberries that I've washed off that are going to get added. First job for me then is I've peeled and chopped up these 2 cooking apples, and I've put in 50 grams of sugar because it's going to be a crumble, and because I happen to have quite a lot now of dark brown sugar. I bought a big bag of that the other day. I've used 50 grams of dark brown sugar, but you could use caster sugar there, it's fine. And I've put in about 2 tablespoons of water. I'm going to put this on the heat, and I'm going to turn the heat on, and probably for about 4 or 5 minutes I'm just going to allow those apples to start softening up. I don't want them to be puree, but I do want them to be a bit softer. Obviously if it was for eating apples, I wouldn't go through that process. Next thing is the temperatures you're going to need to preheat your oven to. You need it on about 180-degree fan oven or about gas mark 5. You then need some sort of dish that is going to be big enough, 1, to hold your fruit in, but 2, is able to go into the oven. So I've got this dish here which is see-through, because then hopefully you'll be able to see the fruit in it. And you need to be able to grease or butter the inside of that dish. I saved the wrappers off my butter at the moment, and so I'm just going to use the inside of that wrapper of butter, which has got the little bits of butter on it, just to grease the inside of that container. And this is so that the crumble and the fruit won't stick. And it's also just using up little bits of butter that are left on there. So that's done. There we go. I'm going to put that to one side. The heat's now getting into the apples, so I'm just going to stir them around, and I will continue to do that every few minutes. Just give them a little stir so it doesn't get too hot and burn the apples. The next stage then is to get the other ingredients that are going to make the crumble topping. Now you're going to do the rubbing in method, and you need 100 grams of plain flour and 100 grams of butter to do this. To rub in, I've got the butter and the flour in the mixing bowl, and I've coated the butter with the flour, and I've chopped any bits of butter up into quite small cubes. Now because we're adding oats to this, it's going to be like an oaty flapjack topping as well. There's quite a lot of fat to rub in. So, keep spinning it round and moving it around a bit. Because of that, you want to rub in lightly using your fingertips and thumbs, constantly picking up new bits of flour and butter so that you're not overworking the butter and melting it. We're looking to coat the butter with the flour, and as we rub in, we're turning the butter and flour into a mixture that looks like breadcrumbs. However, because there's not a lot of flour in here, because we're going to add oats, it may well become a little bit claggy, so we're going to need to watch and stop before the butter starts to melt. So I'm just going to do that quickly, all the while keeping a little eye on the apples and being ready to turn those down. Like I said, you can do any fruit here. You can choose what fruit you want to add. Some fruit will need a little bit of cooking beforehand, but most fruit wouldn't. Still a few lumps. Now to check for lumps with this, you give the whole bowl a shake. Like I say, I know that there's going to be lumps in this because there's not enough flour to really get this rubbed in properly. So I know that there will be some lumps. And so I'm going to call that okay. I'm now going to add in my oats, and that's 140 grams of oats, and I'm now going to incorporate the rubbing in with the oats, and that will help me because the oats start to absorb some of that butter as well. Don't worry if there's a few lumps of butter, that's not going to be a problem. It's not like pastry making. I quite like the flapjack topping on this. I'm not a great fan of crumble, but when there's flapjack topping on, I can cope a little bit better with it. So getting right to the very bottom of that bowl and making sure that that's incorporated. Now at this stage I'm going to just clean my hands off and stir the apples. And to this mixture, which has got some lumps in, that is okay, I'm going to then add a teaspoon of cinnamon. I'm going to have to wash my hands, they're too dirty. Sorry, I can't bear to get hands with butter on them into the spices. So a teaspoon of cinnamon goes in. I could have put that in with the apples as I cooked them, but I've chosen to do it there. That's half a teaspoon the measure, so that's why it's 2 of those. And I'm going to stir it using a knife that I've used to butter my bread, which then starts to get that cinnamon incorporated. Then I'm going to add in my sugar. Now, it's 100 grams of light soft brown sugar if you've got it. I don't have any at the moment, I don't know why. Well, I know what's going on at the moment, but at the moment I can get hold of dark brown soft sugar, but I couldn't get hold of light brown. So I'm going to use this. It will just make it a slightly more intense, sweeter flavour than if I use caster sugar, which is my other option. So 100 grams of sugar. It is soft sugar, so it will be quite interesting to try and stir this in. I'm just going to try and cut up any big lumps of sugar because I don't want someone to end up with a great big lump of sugar. And then the last bit is what's going to make this like little clusters of crumble. And to this I'm going to add about a tablespoon of golden syrup. I'm not going to measure that, I'm just going to go by eye. And then you use the knife still that you would butter your bread with, and you just stir that syrup in, so that you end up with a few little lumps of the flapjack mix. There we are. So it's just starting to stick together a little bit there. So, moving these bits out of the way, those apples have been cooking for about 4 or 5 minutes. So they're starting to soften down a little bit. They've released quite a lot of liquid there. So some recipes say if you're using eating apples to add in some fruit juice to it. I don't need to because there's an awful lot of juice in there from where they've cooked down, and also because I added 2 tablespoons of water at the start. So the apples are going to go into dish that I'm going to cook this in. Now I've got my blueberries. I don't quite know how that's going to go because I think the apples are going to be quite sharp and very sickly sweet because of that dark brown sugar, but I'm going to put them in because, like I said, they need to be used up. So they're just going to slide in there too. They've got a little bit of water from where I've washed them there. And then it's a case of popping your topping on the top of this. So I'm just going to sprinkle this on top. Now I think for me there is too much topping here, so what I'm going to do is put where I think is about right. Now different people like different amounts of topping and I appreciate that. But for this bit here I'm going to put this into a freezable container. I'm going to pop it in the freezer and I'm going to use this another day when I've maybe got enough to make a couple of little mini crumbles. I'm not going to press this down too much. If I press it down it will kind of lose the little lumps that we've got formed with the flapjack topping. And it's going to go into the oven now, as I say, gas mark 5, 180 for about 30 or 35 minutes. You're then going to take it out, and because the fruit will then be very, very hot, you need to leave it for 10 minutes before you then serve it for your dessert. I hope you enjoy this one. Like I say, there's different fruit you can add to this. If you've got spare crumble topping, pop it in the fridge, pop it in the freezer and use it another day as well. But I hope that you enjoy making some fruit crumble. Thank you. So the crumbles come out of the oven. As you can see, it's quite nice and golden brown on top. This one's gone particularly golden brown on top because it's got the dark brown sugar in there. If you've used light brown sugar or caster sugar, it won't look as brown as this. You can also see around the edges here where the fruit has turned liquidy and made a syrup with the sugar that was in it while it cooked, and that has come up over the edges as well. There are little lumps here where the flapjack, the oats, have mixed with the golden syrup and turned into little like flapjack bits as well. A little bit of a twist on the crumble. I have to say I quite like it. Hopefully you might enjoy that too. Thank you.